Welcome to Meet the Truth, a Carnivore X production. I'm Jason Barrett, the Carnivore pharmacist. This is where we cut through the noise, reclaim health, and tell the truth, one bite at a time. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Meet the Truth podcast. I'm your host, Jason Barrett. I'm the Carnivore pharmacist. And today, we're going to be talking about the dopamine economy, why we're addicted to everything except the truth. This is something I really wanted to talk about because it was huge. I cannot emphasize the impact that this had on me once I had been removed from some of these foods that were really in control of me. I was chasing cravings instead of me listening to true hunger. And I just want to break it down because I talk to a lot of people, and this is where they get hung up the most. And it's usually they'll blame it on, well, it's just what I've always done, or it's a family tradition, or it's just the way I was taught. But in a lot of cases, that's really not the truth, because what if, grandma told you to eat spinach and you hated it? You didn't just keep eating that. So it's usually there's some sort of a pleasure, there's some sort of a comfort aspect to the whole thing. And so I'd really just want to magnify in and zoom in on that real quick, because this is why, in a lot of ways, carnivore is so helpful for so many people. We're living in a dopamine economy. Everything around us, from our food to our phones to all the different types of entertainment that we have, it's just designed to keep us chasing the next little rush. We've traded satisfaction for stimulation. We're not even chasing pleasure. We're just chasing relief a lot of the times. So let's talk about dopamine. Dopamine's thrown around a lot these days. You hear people say, oh, I got a dopamine hit, or, whatever. And dopamine is very heavily involved, but a lot of people have it almost backwards. So, let me just hit you right with this. Dopamine is not the pleasure chemical. It's really not. There's a whole cocktail of different chemicals, and I'll go through a list of those that are involved in that euphoria or that high or that hit or whatever it may be that people, however you describe it, that sensation that is pleasant, very pleasant. But it's not dopamine. Dopamine is actually the motivational neurotransmitter that drives you to seek the reward, not to enjoy it. And think about it like this. The first time you try, whether it be a food, whether it be sex, whether it be a drug, like a street drug that are highly, highly addictive, when you first do that, you have a choice. Do I do it or do I not? And dopamine's really not heavily involved at this point. But let's say you try whatever it is, and you get that euphoria, you get that rush, you get that pleasure, that sensation, whatever, that high, whatever it is, however you describe it, because different things, different strokes for different folks. But when you do that, you do get that euphoria, you do get that feeling, and then after that wears off, you remember that. And maybe you associate it with a smell, or you associate it with a place or an activity or whatever it may be. Your brain, when it gets that craving, that is when dopamine is involved in motivating you to go get that thing, to go get it. And a lot of times, it can be food. Let's say you get a sweet tooth, for instance. Yeah, it's just like, oh, I've got a sweet tooth. Who doesn't? I mean, sugar is like crack. It's like a drug. It's very addictive. It's very dopamine driven these days. You could finish eating and be completely stuffed where you couldn't take another bite, but there's a little dopamine monster in your brain saying, but there's still room for dessert, and somehow there always is. Trust me, I'm the world's biggest sugar fiend, so I get it, and that's what I wanted to emphasize here. And so dopamine is actually the motivational, and it's think about it like this: the difference between a craving and hunger. Craving is dopamine driven. You need it. You want it now. You might stop what you're doing right in the middle of doing it to go get it. If that donut sounds good, or that fast food sounds good, or that pizza or ice cream or candy or whatever it is, you may get up off the couch, go get in your car and drive across town and get it. Hunger, if it's just hunger,
A lot of times you can be like, okay, I'm hungry, but I can probably wait 30 minutes to an hour. Like I can wait to prepare the food, or I can order whatever it is. And you're more in control, I should say. Now, there's different levels, like I said, if you get to a full-blown addiction, then dopamine's basically in control at this point. The craving is in control. And at this point, it becomes dangerous because it kind of hijacks your brain. It makes it to where you'll kind of lose. I mean, an extreme case would be someone who's on like a street drug who's highly, highly addicted, say crack or cocaine or meth or something like this. You've seen them. And they are out of their mind. They're driven, and all that matters is that next hit. Would they hurt their mother? Would they steal from their family? Would they do something that they know is going to have bad consequences? Yes. Yes, because they're not in control. And so addiction kind of that goes to a whole other level, and there's neural pathways that are affected at that point. And that is probably that's the hardest level there. But that is very dopamine driven, because every time that high wears off, every time that euphoria wears off, dopamine spikes again, and now they have to go they're going to go seek that. Now, the high itself, let me break down just kind of the little cascade that's involved here. You've got some endorphins, those that your body, they're in your body's natural chemicals that it releases that are relieving, they're pleasant. They're involved in a whole bunch of things, but they're definitely involved in this. You've got serotonin, which is just, it's calming. It's it's the opposite of stress, essentially. It's just cool and sensitive and calm. You got GABA, which is another neurotransmitter that just it quiets the noise, and it's a calming, relieving neurotransmitter. You got the endocannabinoids, which those are your own body's cannabinoids, like THC and CBD are cannabinoids. These are different. These are your body makes them inside itself, and these also relax you. Oxytocin, which that's kind of the hormone of connection and comfort. It's highly involved when you're in love, and so obviously it feels good whenever oxytocin is present. Um, and so just kind of think about it like dopamine is the push. It's to get you to go do the thing, whatever it is, and then all the others are the actual pleasure. So how let's talk a little bit about how modern life hijacks dopamine in regards to like today's world, because 100 years ago it was a different world, 200 years ago it was a different world, 1,000 years ago it was a different world. But in today's society, we've got a lot working against us. And essentially, think about it this way. Since we know that dopamine is highly involved in habitual behavior that can lead to addiction, it can become it can control you. Essentially, if these big companies that have influence over your life, if they can control your dopamine levels, then they can essentially control you. And so food companies, they mix sugar and fat and flavored just to keep you seeking another bite. There's literally, it's a lot of these processed foods and fast foods. It's literally like a science experiment. It's like in a lab, they are trying to find the best blend to get to what they call the bliss point. And what that is that's when it has the best taste, the best texture, the best smell, the right amount of salt, the right amount of sugar, the right amount of savoriness, the color, everything about it is just so good that you get maximum pleasure. And if they can get it to where you get maximum pleasure, especially if you only eat it once, then the chances of you going and doing it again because dopamine made you do that is very high, which is why a lot of these fast food restaurants have been very, very successful, because they have literally uh, done that experiment to find the very best way to do it. And it's almost not even fair. Now, another one, obviously, we know social media can be very, very addictive, and they use what's called variable rewards, which does the same thing in your brain. It works on the same system. Let's say that you go post a picture on social media, and all of a sudden you're getting these reactions and these likes and these comments and shares and attention, and it feels good, and it feels good. Well, and then tomorrow, let's say you share someone else's post and it gets something, you're getting variable rewards. And sometimes it's like a big one, sometimes you do it and it just gets so many reactions and it gets so many comments and it just explodes. And then the next one is like not the same. And that's why it's never the same thing. But you still get that high. You still get a subsequent dopamine spike that is going to say, hey, it's time for another picture. It's time to do this again. And it can turn into, to where it's controlling you. There's dopamine is telling you, go do another post, go do another thing. And before you know it, you may be spending too much time on there. You may know it. You may get on there and think, and not only that, just the scrolling mechanism. When you're scrolling through and it's gotten to know you, that algorithm is talking to you. It may know you better than you know yourself. It knows what's going to grab your attention, what you're going to watch, what you're going to like, what you're going to share, what you might comment on. And it's getting better and better. It's almost getting scary better. And so, think about that. And when they're feeding that to you, you may have just opened it up to look at it for a couple of minutes, and before you know it, you've been scrolling for an hour and a half. Well, that happens quite a bit. Funny correlation here. The exact same mechanism is used at slot machines at casinos. Variable rewards, same concept. You put the money in, you start pulling the slot, ding, ding, bang, 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 all of a sudden, and then boom, you may hit the jackpot, which bing, 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 you got lights, you got bells, you got whistles going off, not just in front of you on that machine, also in your brain. You've got that euphoria, you've got that excitement, you've got that fun, you've got that experience that ain't going to last. And when it wears off, guess what? Dopamine is going to spike as high, basically it's correlated. So if you win the jackpot, then boom, tomorrow dopamine's going to be like, yo, go back, do it again, and this can turn into a vicious cycle, which can become an addiction. I'm sure everybody knows somebody who's been affected by gambling. Even health marketing feeds the loop. Hack this, fix that, buy now. This supplement is a cure-all for everything, or switch over to this thing, call me today. There's so many different tactics out there, and it's very easy to let it turn into where you're not in control. We don't really have a willpower problem. We have a dopamine problem, because if dopamine spikes get too high, your willpower can just be sapped. Like you're not in control. So for me, this is why I want to talk about this. So for me, whenever I went on Carnivore, honestly, I thought I was only going to do it for 30 days. I really didn't think it was going to work, because I'm a pharmacist, and I had learned in pharmacy school all the dangers of red meat and saturated fat and cholesterol. And I was just convinced that the lack of fiber, I would have chronic constipation, I would have gout, I would have inflammation. They'd say red meat's so inflammatory. And, I believed it to some degree, amongst other things. I just didn't think it was going to work, because it didn't sound like a complete diet to me. But after I did it for 30 days, less than 30 days, just a couple of weeks, I started feeling tremendous. And so I did it for 30 days, and then 60 and 90 and 180. And then before I know it, I've done it for a whole year. I feel better than I have since I was a teenager. I have energy. I can play with my kids. I have mental clarity. My inflammation's down. I've lost 50 pounds. I've put on muscle. I can sleep well. I can recover good. I want to work out. Like, the list goes on. There's so many benefits that were gone that came back to me, and I wasn't even aware. One of the biggest ones was brain fog. I was not aware that I had brain fog until it was gone. And then I'm like, I had oh my God, I was just living in fog. I didn't know it. It was crazy. I mean, it was mind-blowing to me. And then one of the biggest things I noticed after just a few weeks, after all the sugar cravings went away and my body became what they call fat adapted, to where it gets really good at burning ketones and breaking down fatty acids and everything, basically fat metabolism optimizes. Oh my God. I realized there is a vast, stark difference between cravings, which used to drive me, and hunger, which that's what carnivore is. Because I promise you, you're not going to overeat on carnivore. It's such a dense food, especially if you're eating fattier cuts of meat. Fat's very filling. When your body gets enough fat, it's just going to It's going to turn it off, and like the food's going to stop tasting good. And that's essentially what I tell people to do is eat until the food stop. I don't care how many ribeye steaks you cook, eat it until it stops tasting good. Don't just eat one little serving and go, oh, I need to calorie restrict. No, don't do that. Listen to your hunger. If your body said you were thirsty, you wouldn't just go drink half a glass of water and go, oh, I'm going to, no, you drink it until you're not thirsty anymore. If you're sleepy, you go lay down and you sleep. Hunger is supposed to work the same way, but in America today, a lot of times it's not. A lot of times hunger and cravings are confused. And I was very much that person. Getting some distance from the cravings really, really showed me how much dopamine was a player here, because when dopamine levels were normalized, oh my God, I no longer felt like I was a victim and that I was, unable to control myself around certain foods. Now my dopamine was actually working for me in a good way. It knew that I felt good when I worked out. It knew that I felt better when I got better sleep quality. It knew and so it was like, go do that again. Go get a good night's sleep. Call your friend. Go do things that are actually good for you and increase your vitality. And so I almost got addicted to a better way of living. But I had to get some distance from it before I realized just how powerful that dopamine was. So, the carnivore diet, what it does is it removes the artificial dopamine spikes. And what I mean is those processed foods that have been optimized in a lab to get to the bliss point, to make you hit that spike, that high. It's as bad as a drug. And when you don't have that dopamine, that's the subsequent dopamine spikes afterwards, boom, whole different game. At first it's going to feel like withdrawal, because it is. When you go through any sort of withdrawal, whether it's tobacco, could be alcohol, could be drugs, could be gambling, could be sex, could be porn, could be food, could be anything. When you go through a withdrawal period, then you are going to feel like crap. You are, because your body was kind of used to getting that hit, and it's not going to get anymore. So, you're going to have fatigue. You're going to be irritable. You're probably going to have some brain fog. Give your body some time. It will normalize. The dopamine levels will come down. You will be able to function again. And, but I'm not going to lie, the first week or two on carnivore is probably the hardest, and it's mainly because of that. It's because you're kind of going, and it depends on what your diet was before. If you were already like keto and you're already used to like burning fat for fuel, and then you go carnivore, it's going to be much easier than if you were eating a whole bunch of carbs and sugar. But just keep that in mind. You may have to go through a withdrawal period, and then your body, if it's not used to being on a ketogenic diet, it is going to take some time for it to go, oh, we're not getting any more carbohydrates. We're not getting any sugar. Good news is your body doesn't need them. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. Your body can make glucose on demand through the liver, through gluconeogenesis, and it does it very well. I don't know if you listened to the last episode. We had Mr. Kyle Tubbs on here, and he is running ultra marathons on the carnivore diet. He would have already died from a severe hypoglycemic episode if he ran out of sugar from running. He's running ultra marathons, longer than a regular marathon, with zero carbohydrates at all. Think about that. That's huge. But after the first couple of weeks or whatever, and it varies, like I said, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks most of the time. After you get past that withdrawal period, then you get the peace, then you get the clarity, then you get the presence, then you get the mental fog lifts, your energy soars, the cravings die, you feel balanced, you feel good, And it's mostly because carnivore, at the end of the day, it's not the meat that's magical. I've said this before, but it's because of the absence. It's what you're not getting is why it works so well. It's not what you are getting. You got to think about it as you're getting rid of a long list of problematic foods in America these days, and that are inundated. They're everywhere. They're in all your fast food. They're in 90% of the grocery stores. If you're not on the perimeter of the store, you're buying processed food. You are getting things in your food that are not adding any health to your body. To me, it's either adding health or it's taken away. There's no such thing as like a neutral thing other than maybe water. But obviously you had to have water. But I'm just saying there's no such thing like everybody thinks, oh, if it doesn't have calories, it's neutral. That is not true. It can have preservatives. It can have toxins. It can have seed oils. I mean, there's so many different things that they put in these foods, and people look at it. Oh, it's heart healthy. Oh, it's organic. Oh, it's non-GMO. Oh, it's 0 calories. Oh, it's 0 fat, whatever it may be. And they lead you to believe that it's good for you, and it's not. It's going through, it's not adding health. If anything, it's taking away, or it's just adding inflammation. And we know that inflammation is the root of all disease. So you basically, when you stop chasing highs, your brain finally remembers what peace feels like. And when I say remembers, you've been there before. At some point when you were a kid or a younger person, you were here. You felt great. You had that energy, you had that clarity, you had that pep in your step. Somewhere along the way, you lost it. I mean, and once you get it back, you'll just think this is what I thought when it finally hit me. I didn't think it was possible to return back, to that state of health until I did. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I just thought that the way I felt, which was like crap, was normal. I just thought that was normal aging. I thought everybody feels like this. I had no idea. No, 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 no. It can be a lot better. And let me put it this way. When I work in the pharmacy, I'll have people that'll come in that are 95, 96, 100 years old. And they don't look it. I mean, you wouldn't think they're a day over 70, which, they're sharp as a tack. They're walking on their own two legs. They come in regularly. They look healthy as a horse. And if you ask them, how? Like, how do you do this? A lot of times there's a dietary component they'll tell you about where they're eating pretty clean. They're not eating this garbage that a lot of that we're all hooked on here in America today. They're eating clean. And not only that, they've just got a pretty healthy lifestyle. They're very social. They get around and they talk. They have good friendships. They have purpose in life. They are not high stress. They're caring. They're generous. I mean, there's a long list, and I'm trying to emulate that. I'm trying to pick up some clues from some of these because I'd love to feel great and live. Even, I mean, if I can get to 80 and feel as good as they do, then I'll be happy. So. So now I want to talk about retraining the brains. Essentially, when you remove the artificial triggers, whatever that may be, sugar, scrolling, junk food, replace it with meaningful rewards. You do need to replace it. I'm not saying to just go sit in the corner, and not do nothing, because if you don't replace it, I promise you that craving is going to come back and you're going to lose that battle. You're going to be back over there doing whatever it was you said you were going to stop doing. Or maybe you've successfully quit something that was the level of an addiction, and all of a sudden you get to a stressful period, you get a few bad nights of sleep, you're vulnerable, you go, you know what, I need something, I need some comfort. You go hit that thing one more time, and before you know it, it's a full relapse. You're worse than you were before. It's very common in addiction, and it could be to anything. I mean, it's so crazy how different people are susceptible to one thing and resistant to others, and then the very next person is susceptible to a whole other level of addiction. Some people are just, you can even be addicted to negative emotions. Some people just wake up and they're so used to being anxious and stressed every day that their brain is finding things to be anxious and stressed about, which dumps a lot of chemicals into your system and spikes cortisol and wreaks havoc, on your symptoms, on your system every single day. And you're addicted to it. Like, you are addicted to doing that. It is a cycle. It feels normal to you, but it doesn't have to be. But if you replace it with a meaningful world, something like movement or sunlight or connecting with other people or whatever you want to, throw workouts in there. Throw, if you like reading, if you like writing, if you like creating things or writing a book, anything that could be productive, that you could, make a difference, or, it elevates you to do that, go do that. If it's meaningful to you, replace the bad things, tweak it and make it something meaningful. One thing I'll say is allow boredom. And I say that because, number one, I'm a country boy. I was raised on a farm. I was 7 miles out of the city. And even then, it was a very small town. But, before I could drive, so basically my whole childhood up until I was about 16, I was out in the country, you know, I had to go find I had to go play in the dirt. I had to go, you know, look at the cows or go fishing or go hunting or go, you know, ride the horse or a four-wheeler or something like that. Uh, and then I was a hunter as well. And I will say I started hunting when I was very young. I was probably 9 or 10 years old up out in the woods with my dad. You know, let me tell you, when you're, especially as a kid, when you're sitting up in a tree at 5 o'clock in the morning before daylight, you're freezing to death. And occasionally the deer, they just don't move, or whatever it is you're hunting ain't moving that day. And you might sit there for 5 hours. And let me just remind you, back then, I mean, we're talking, this was in the 90s. There was no Wi-Fi, there was no cell phones, there was no entertainment up in that tree. You were bored. You were bored. So I would say, welcome, you know, allow boredom. Allow it. You don't need to be stimulated all day long. You don't need to constantly be scrolling on your phone or constantly watching, binging Netflix or constantly eating or if you feel the need to do that, step back and allow a little bit of boredom. You know, turn it off. Go in, go get some sunlight, sit in the backyard and just close your eyes and breathe for a little while, and you'll just, your body will rebalance. It really will. And not only that, but when you allow boredom, your brain kind of, it gets a break, and it allows awareness. It allows creativity. That's when I get my best ideas. Is when I'll just stop thinking for a minute and just sit there and be. And sometimes it's in the shower. I don't know why. Maybe I'm weird, but when I'm in the shower, a lot of times I'm just kind of enjoying the shower, the warm water hitting me, and I'm stretching, or it's almost like a massage, you know, for me. And a lot of times, out of nowhere, just aha, great idea. Man, that's a great idea. I want to talk about that on my next podcast. Or man, that's a great idea. I want to look into that. That might be my next business. Um, and I encourage that, because when you have those aha moments, it feels good. And I will say, back when I was highly inflamed and I had brain fog and lacked all the mental clarity, those weren't happening. So that was a welcome surprise when all of a sudden aha moments started happening, not just occasionally, but actually pretty regularly. And I can thank Carnivore for that, because it was very noticeable after just a couple of months of being on Carnivore. Another thing is to prioritize sleep. Obviously, it does not matter what diet you're on. It does not matter how hard you work out. It does not matter how many supplements you take or how well your stress is managed. If you aren't getting good sleep, you're screwed. Sleep is critical. I cannot emphasize that enough. Sleep is critical, because not only is it, you know, rejuvenating you and recharging you, basically your battery, but it's also removing toxins. The lymphatic and the glymphatic system, which is in your brain, is removing, and this is like good good toxins. Like, that's what I'm saying is, normal healthy cells still have toxins, and your body has a healthy way of removing them. It's through the lymphatic and glymphatic system. And a lot of that happens at night. If you're not getting good sleep, then essentially it's almost like the chimney in your house, you just clogging it up and filling the whole house up with smoke. Same concept. It's getting, why would you do that to yourself? You're not going to be able to breathe. And if you do breathe, it's going to be harmful to you. All you need to do is open the chimney. Well, that's called a good night's sleep. Prioritize sleep. Like, literally, don't don't agree to work a late shift if you've got to be up at 5 o'clock the next morning. Don't think that you're Superman or Superwoman. I used to do that. It's detrimental. Um, most people need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Some people can, you know, a very rare amount of people can get by regularly on 6 hours or less. But I promise you, the studies don't lie. The studies don't lie. Mortality, morbidity, all the problems that if you have a lack of quality sleep, it's so, you know, prioritize that. And then protein, you know, make sure you're getting plenty of protein. A lot of people, if they're not getting that, then it's very hard for their body, because there are 9 essential amino acids. And if you're either getting a poor quality of protein or just not enough, it's going to lead to problems. Your body has so many proteins. I mean, your muscles obviously are made of, but your body uses proteins for so many other biological, physiological functions. You got to have plenty of them. And it also affects, you know, dopamine repair. So, you know, this isn't dopamine fasting, it's dopamine rehabilitation. So, I mean, just think about it like this, guys. Every bite, every sip, every click, you're training your brain what to crave. You're going to crave something. You are. You could be craving something good, or you could be craving something that you know is bad for you. If you know it's bad and you still have the craving, think about it. Just stop and think. And a lot of times it's easier for me to think about it in someone else, like not me. Like for me, I'm like, it ain't that bad. I'll eat this. But if it was like my kid and I'm watching this, them adopt this bad habit, all of a sudden I'm so much more conscious of how bad it is, because it's like, wait, if they do that, yeah, today it's not going to be super detrimental. But if they do that, if we build this habit now and this turns into a lifelong thing, is this going to cause problems in their 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever? Yes, it is. Then why would we do that? We don't want to do that. And so treat yourself, think of yourself as your animal, or as your because people wouldn't do that to their livestock. They wouldn't feed, you know, toxic sludge to their dog if they knew it was going to harm their dog. They wouldn't do that. And so why would you do that to yourself? Why? And I mean, drugs, alcohol, all these different things, we know they're not adding to your health. And if they're not adding, they're removing, they're raising your risk for all kinds of different things. The world sells stimulation. Truth sells peace. I even this, I'm still a pharmacist, and a lot of times there's dopamine, in a bottle. And I don't mean that literally, but what I mean is that a lot of times these drugs, these controlled substances, which are known, I mean, this is why they're controlled. They're known to be habit forming, or they're known to lead to dependence, whether that's chemical dependence or whether that's because it's more of an addictive type thing. And if it turns into that, it's very dopamine driven. Once it turns into an addiction, it gets unhealthy. It gets unhealthy because now that's what's in control. And I see it. And trust me, I've got plenty of colleagues that I talk to. We all see it. And so you got to understand, it means a lot to me whenever I see this happening, and it's happening probably all across the world, but definitely all across America. So now I try to help people produce dopamine naturally. You're gonna have dopamine. You can't turn dopamine off. But wouldn't you want to use it as a tool that's useful, that's productive, that's leading to some outcome that you desire? I know I would. And Carnivore did that for me. So, guys, if you know anybody that needs to hear this episode, if they're tired of feeling wired and empty, please share this episode. Please tell them, choose truth over stimulation. Pay attention, because dopamine is so powerful, and don't give the remote control over to these big companies. It's your life. Stay in the driver's seat. Go where you want to go. Do what you want to do. Be healthy. And until next time, guys, stay good.
Thanks for tuning in to Meet the Truth, a Carnivore X production. If this episode helped you, share it with someone who needs the truth. Stay primal, and I'll see you in the next one.
This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Please consult your qualified healthcare professional for any health decisions.